I can complain,
Great
but I have a
students.
job. Huh?
Still with great students.
Yeah. All right. So whenever you all are ready, we'll go through the same thing. I'll give you your 5-minute countdown, and then
What
we
time's
will.
it do?
Right now, we're not gonna go by that one. It is 2:58, so I'll keep track on it on here. Okay?
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Christopher Just,
Nicholas Ritos. I'm Dario Bernardo.
And I'm Eddie Tapia.
and we all want to thank you for coming in our presentation. And today we'll be discussing one of my favorite topics, beer. Where are my beer drinkers at? Oh, okay. We
Let's
got
see.
1, 2, 3.
Let's
Right
see.
on, right on.
Okay.
Now picture this: you're at a party, you see a cooler full of beer, like particularly Budweiser. Do you ever wonder like where that beer came from or anything like that? No, absolutely not. You want to drink your beer and enjoy yourself. Who wants to ask that? No, you wanted to get it, enjoy yourself. I wouldn't handle that. I'd be like, dude, drink your beer. You got a party, bro. Enjoy. So, but however, this is not a party. This is a presentation. Particularly, we're going to be discussing AB-Inbev. Now, who and what is AB-Inbev? AB-Inbev is short for Anheuser-Busch InBev, and is the world's largest brewer, formed in 2008 through the merger of InBev and Anheuser-Busch. Now, quick little background about AB-Inbev. Before the merger in 2008, Anheuser-Busch was its own American brewery. It was established in 1852, and it was located in St. Louis, Missouri. They actually, after the merger, they still do their headquarters, they still do their brewing to this day. And then InBev is an international brewing company that was formed in 2004. That was through the merger of the Brazilian company Ambev and the Belgian company Interbrew. So a lot of these beers that you see today that everyone sees as like Corona right here, Budweiser, and my personal favorite, Stella. No, not Stella, my ex-girlfriend. Stella the beer. That's way better. Doesn't complain. Doesn't wake me up at 6 in the morning because I left the dishes in the sink, and doesn't judge me on if I have one too many. So, but a lot of those popular beers you see come from AB-Inbev. Now, what's the point of today's presentation? Here's what to expect. We will discuss on how AI interprets Aaron Meyer's book on evaluating and disagreeing, summarize strategy, formulation, and implementation on the chapter 8 of the International Management book, and how AB-Inbev applies these concepts to the real world. And without further ado, I'm going to take it to my colleague, Nicholas.
How we doing today, folks? I'm Nicholas Ritos, and today we're gonna go on a little journey through artificial intelligence and its thoughts on Aaron Meyer's The Culture Map. So just a little background for my presentation. For my part of the presentation, I prompted AI a few questions concerning Aaron Meyer's The Culture Map. Basically, what was the need for it? How can it be used in cross-cultural collaboration and HR management, amongst other things. So in terms of why was the need for a culture map, AI spit out the fact that globalization has increased the need for effective cross-cultural collaboration. And this was a recurring theme with AI. Anything that I asked it concerning Aaron Meyer's The Culture Map, it referenced globalization as its main topic and factor. Essentially, the Culture Map by Aaron Meyer provides a structured way to navigate these challenges, the challenges that arise from cross-cultural collaboration, such as communication issues, ineffective management styles, and any type of barriers to entry that arise when you're dealing with multiple cultures in the same business setting. Also, it helped teams understand and adapt to different cultural norms and communication styles, like I said. So this was AI's pretty much summarization of the Culture Map. Also, the Culture Map, which in essence is an eight-scale model presented by Aaron Meyer on how to deal with business in a cross-cultural collaboration effort. So using this model, you can basically reduce conflict, enhance communication, and improve collaboration in these multicultural environments. I forget I had this in my hand, I'm sorry. So I asked AI what some of the problems were solved by the Culture Map and what the need for it was, and a few of the ones I want to touch on today are miscommunication and leadership conflicts. So in terms of miscommunication, some of the problems solved by the Culture Map, according to AI, was that it's able to bridge that miscommunication gap by giving the reader or different people different arrangements on how to communicate more effectively with people from different cultures. So let's say you're an American businessman and you're placed in South Korea, or excuse me, one of her examples she used was somebody in South Korea of descent going to like Switzerland or having a business in the Netherlands. Certain management styles and leadership styles in those countries that are direct countries are going to be different from indirect countries like Korea, Thailand, and Japan. So that was a big thing, miscommunication. And then referring to leadership conflicts, the culture map and its 8-scale model kind of, it's like a how-to book on how to deal with different styles of management and leadership. So applying this 8-scale model on HR management, I'm just gonna touch on a few things such as trusting, disagreeing, scheduling, persuading. In terms of disagreeing, applying this 8-scale model on HR management is kind of a how-to on how to handle disagreements with different cultures. So like, I'm gonna touch on in a few slides, there's indirect cultures, avoiding cultures, direct cultures. All of these different types of cultures, when they merge in one business setting, you're gonna need to know how to effectively communicate in disagreements with them. And in terms of cross-cultural communication, AI talked about communicating, evaluating, leading, and deciding as some of the things that emanated from the culture map in Aaron Meyer's book. In terms of communication, it just once again talked about the different communication styles with different cultures. That was the recurring theme with AI, globalization and communication. So the chapters that we had as a group were evaluating and disagreeing. So this was Aaron Meyer's specific, the things that specifically emanated from her book that she wrote. In terms of evaluation, direct feedback cultures, these are gonna be your cultures such as the United States, France, Germany. These type of cultures, open discussion and debate is warranted and accepted, and that's what they want out of their employees. Indirect feedback cultures are gonna be the cultures like Thailand, Japan, Korea, where when they're evaluating in those cultures, evaluation usually comes from a third party because they don't want any type of rift between themselves and the employee. It's seen as rude or unbecoming. And then if we go down to disagreeing, these same so the direct feedback cultures are also gonna be pretty much our confrontational cultures. US, France, and Germany, where confrontation can happen at any place in the workplace. It's not unaccustomed to see somebody arguing with a manager or somebody in a position of power. And it's just very well known in those cultures. Avoiding cultures are going to be Japan, Thailand, and Indonesia. And in avoiding cultures, it's almost like the indirect feedback cultures. Is they avoid confrontation. And if there is confrontation, it's all normally they bring in a third party to handle that confrontation. So a bunch of the examples Aaron Meyer used in the book where she would talk about someone who, let's say, was from an avoiding culture and they got placed with a company in the US or France or Germany, and they had to pretty much direct themselves to act in accordance with that confrontational culture, which was unbecoming of them. So she used somebody from Korea who went to work in the US, and the manager was being very direct and very stern with them, and they took it as offense. And instead of going back and forth with them like the manager would assume that an employee would do, they just kind of twinkled their toes and walked away. So essentially, AB-Inbev must foster an inclusive environment by recognizing cultural preferences for feedback and disagreement. So in terms of evaluating and disagreeing, AB-Inbev operates in all places all over the world, so they need to account for these when doing business. So essentially, the concept of Aaron Meyer's culture map revolves around the idea that cultural differences profoundly influence how people communicate, lead, and make decisions and interact in the workplace. That was basically the summary that I took from the book, and AI's was a little different, and I'll talk about that. So essentially, the artificial intelligence versus Aaron Meyer. So similarities, there were a lot of similarities in the way that AI and Aaron Meyer kind of prompted how to use the 8-scale model in terms of HR management and cultural collaboration. So they were pretty much the same on that. In terms of differences, AI, like I said, was really, really, really all about globalization. Why the need for a culture map was needed, what the 8-scale model was intended to do. It was all about how to combat the side effects of globalization. Aaron Meyer, on the other hand, she's a professor. A lot of her stuff is research-based, and a lot of her examples were very finite examples. Like it just showed that business conducted in different places happens different ways, and every situation is going to call for a different type of remedy for it. Overall analysis, in my opinion, I think the Aaron Meyer book does a better job of explaining how to use how to use tools in evaluating and disagreeing in different cultures. The AI was pretty much a how-to manual, but very robotic because it is artificial intelligence. And it was like a one-scale-fits-all type of model. Aaron Meyer, you can pretty much use it in any culture across the world. So I'm gonna wrap up and hand it over to Dario. He's gonna talk about strategy formulation from our textbook.
Thank you, Nick. So let's dive into the chapter 8 of our textbook, which was about strategy formulation and implementation. So we often, like multinational companies, often love to use fixed road strategy, but how do you come up with, how do you build a successful one? You just don't wake up one day and say, I want to do that. You need to go through 3 different steps. First one is scan the environment, the external environment. So what kind of goods the customer wants, like how do they want it? Is the good, the service? Lastly, you need to go to the second step, which is, can I do it? Can I manufacture it? Am I able, is it my resources, my internal resources? Am I able to create that? And lastly, you need to create like strategic goals based on those 2 analyses you did in the past. So once you get your strategic formulation, you need to implement them. And that starts with the local selection. So you need to try which market you're going to go into, how you're going to go into, through the entry and ownership strategy. So that means you're going to decide if you go through acquisition, through joint ventures, through foreign direct investment. And all of those principles are going to impact your functional strategy execution. So what kind of executive are you going to bring to the firm? And is it going to be a local one, an external one? So all of these steps leads us to like 4 global and regional strategy, depending on the high pressure for local responsiveness and the pressure for cost reduction. So the first one is the global standardization strategy. That's the one Apple uses. So they have 3 kind of like a lot of different products. They have MacBook, iPhone, AirPods, and all of those products are manufactured like in different parts of the world, but it's the same product everywhere in the world. So if you go to China and the US, your iPhone will still be an iPhone. Next, there is the transactional strategy. So this is kind of the strategy Unilever use. They have a lot of different brands, but they adapt to the local part of the world. Next, you have the localization strategy. So this is more like the, I'm sure you all heard of McDonald's, how they adapt their product to the local consumers. So like in India, they have like different kind of burgers, but they have in the US, anything like that. But they still have products like the fries that's the same everywhere, and they like use like very huge supply chain capabilities to develop that in every country. And lastly, the international strategy is most likely just an export strategy. That means you have a top product that is built in a single place, but you ship from this place everywhere in the world. So we can take the example of Rolex as an example. They build watches in Switzerland and they ship it from Switzerland everywhere in the world. So now I'm going to let Eddie tell you about how all 4 concepts apply to AB-Inbev.
All right, now we get to the fun stuff. So as you can see here, we're going to take these real-world concepts and see how AB-Inbev uses them. Right here, I have a list of all the brands owned by Anheuser-Busch InBev. You can see there's a ton of them. There's actually over 400 to be exact. I couldn't fit them all on one slide. The way AB-Inbev wants to do this is they split it into 2 distinct categories. They're global brands. These are brands like Budweiser, Bud Light, Corona, Modelo, Stella Artois, so on. These are the real workhorse brands. These are the brands that you're going to go and they're driving revenue, they're creating the most sales, they're gaining market share. The strategy behind these are going to be that globalization strategy in that top left-hand corner. They're trying to get these to the mass markets, as many people. You can go to the Cayman Islands, all the way over to East Asia, Europe. You're bound to find at least one of these beers on tap, and that's their strategy. Reach the most amount of people possible. All of these different beers in the top will have slightly different tastes and different marketing campaigns, but the goal's still the same. Sell a lot of beer, gain market share. These bottom ones down here, this is what we're going to call our multi-domestic or our regional strategy. This is, right now, it's broken down into continents, but that gets further broken down into countries. So these are most of these small to medium-sized beers that are really crafted for local taste, right? We know that even in the same continent, countries can be border to border, and they have completely different tastes and preferences. So all the brands in this bottom multi-domestic strategy, they're all going to have that localization taste. Let's kind of craft these beers for those local markets. This is where we're going to start with their multi-domestic strategy. Now, a key note that we need to understand with AB-Inbev is they want to grow through acquisition. So when you're going to acquire a company, there's a lot of things that you have to take into account, right? Dario touched a little bit on the strategic formulation, and obviously Nick talked about evaluating. They have to use both of these together to figure out what company's going to work. We have to evaluate, does this company fit into our portfolio? Do they have the same values? Do they agree the same? Do they disagree the same? What are they like, right? Once they do evaluate those companies and they go through their financials and stuff, then they acquire and say, okay, we do want to go into business and we want to acquire these companies. But the number one thing that they're looking for throughout all these beer companies is right here. They want to buy stable beer companies. AB-Inbev isn't in the rescue game. They're not trying to come in and take over a company that's got failing profits and their stock price is going off a cliff. They don't want that. They want safe, stable, successful companies to incorporate. Now, they do pay a premium for these beer brands, but there's a method to their madness. Most of the time when you go through mergers and acquisitions, the firm being acquired usually has a lot of problems and a lot of issues that will start to arise, right? No one wants to be bought by someone else. No one wants to change up everything. So if they're buying these safe and stable, successful beer companies, they don't take that approach of changing anything, right? They don't go and say, hey, we're going to bring in an executive from Germany and an HR manager from the US and change up your culture. That makes no sense. The beer company's already doing well. It's safe, it's stable, and it's successful. They say, hey, we're just going to let you completely do what you've been doing. We're going to leave you alone. Keep doing your localization strategy. Please keep promoting and hiring locals. Please keep doing what you're doing because it's working. This open communication and having this discourse eliminates a lot of disagreements that can start to arise through acquisitions. Now, they don't just sit there and say, yeah, we're going to buy you. You guys do all the work. That'd be insensitive. So they do come in, and because AB-Inbev is so large, they start to streamline the supply chain and help with efficiency. That takes these small to medium beer brands from that small level and really allows them to grow at a more rapid pace. Now let's take a look how this impacts on a global scale. AB-Inbev is really interested in doing two things. They want to grow and they want to cut costs, like any big business would. The main way that AB-Inbev wants to grow is through acquisition, like I talked about. They're not interested in buying these small beer brands or starting a beer brand in a country like, I don't know, Honduras or South Africa. It doesn't make sense to start a new beer company. They just want to buy the competitors. Their whole strategy is to go into a beer market. Let's say there's 5 main beer competitors. Ideally, AB-Inbev wants to own all 5, but they'll settle for 3 or 4. If you own 3 or 4 beers in one market, you're eliminating most of your competition and most of the problems that arise from that. Then they could also pass on to the consumers this illusion of choice, right? It doesn't matter if the red beer's better or the blue beer's better, the adverse marketing campaigns, who's winning the battle. At the end of the day, you're still buying an AB-Inbev beer, and that's the goal. Monopolization through acquisition. The next thing they do, like any big business, is they want to cut costs. So now they're going to start shifting a lot of these businesses from that globalization or that localization into that upper right-hand corner, that transactional that Dario was talking about. This just happens in big business. You're going to have to start cutting costs. Brands are going to have to get eliminated. Jobs are going to have to get reworked. Those things are going to happen. They don't just buy the company and do that. This is over time. They see stuff isn't working. They have to adjust to market trends, taste and preferences shift, so on and so forth. One of the things that AB-Inbev does very, very well with their size is they leverage it in their negotiations. Because AB-Inbev is such a large distributor, let's take that idea that there's 5 major beer brands. If they own 4 of them, they have more negotiation leverage when dealing with their suppliers, right? If you're selling hops or wheat or steel for the kegs, and you're selling to AB-Inbev or all the brands that AB-Inbev owns, they're gonna say, hey, you need to give us better rates. If you don't give us better rates, you're not selling to anybody. That's where that monopolization and that supply chain comes in. By them doing this, it might sound a little mean or rude, but that's just how business is done. Cutting costs, increasing profits. Now, we went over a lot of information here, guys, so I'm going to pass it back over to Chris, and he's going to wrap it all up.
Thank you, Eddie, and thank you, gentlemen, for explaining that presentation and how everything works with AB-Inbev. So, obviously, AB-Inbev is a massive corporation that produces all these beers, and what we established was, thank you to my team right here, it was a lot of information to process. So, to summarize what we just did, we had the mighty Nicholas. He discussed on how AI interprets the Aaron Meyer book on evaluating disguising. The intelligent Dario summarized strategy, formulation, and implementation on the Chapter 8 book of the International Management textbook. And the humble Eddie. Humble Eddie. How AB-Inbev applies these concepts in the real world. How AB-Inbev also buys stable breweries to produce more production and increase equity. Then you have me, right here, the drinker.
I was gonna say, what's your nickname?
The drinker. All these men over here, they did a really well job. They're more wise, but I'm better looking. So here I am. So then you have me, the drinker. And what AB-Inbev, we gotta really say thank you to them, because if I have 6 of their products, I have more confidence in life, and I can take on the world. Which brings me to the next step. We have questions. However, though, we understand it was a stressful semester. There's a catch. We could do our questions. We have exams, we have finals, and Dr. D's birthday just happened. We can take our questions to the bar and consume some AB-Inbev products, feel more confident, or we could do it here, of course.
But if we go to the bar, the first round's on us.
Yeah. Slane, what sounds more fun?
We'll do questions here.
No.
Oh, she went to the bar! Okay, who wants to go to the bar?
Have you?
Yeah?
You gotta be 21. You gotta be 21 and older.
Yeah?
No idea.
If we go, I will pay for all of the appetizers, but I don't pay for anybody's drinks.
Drinks are on
The drinks
us.
are on us.
The
We're
drinks
taking
are on
the
us.
drinks.
I don't
Drinks
pay
are on
for
us.
anybody's drinks, but I do pay for food. And if you don't want to come, it will not, there's no issue with that.
We're trying to go to the Irishman with everyone. This is serious.
You want to take your questions here, or do you want to take your questions at the bar?
Have you called Irishman?
No, we haven't. We hope there's space. There's a Champions League game. It could be packed, but hey.
Yeah,
Let's go for
anybody has any
questions.
We're gonna go for questions.
Yeah.
We're gonna go for questions.
Not a question, but actually two of the brands that were on the world chart, like or at least from abroad where I was, they're seen as competition.
Yeah.
And I'm so shook that like
They're
they're
owned
both
by the
AB
same-
and Bev.
They're both AB.
You gave me a new fact. Now whenever I go back to visit, I'm gonna be like, did you know these two brands are the same company? I'm gonna tell everybody.
So to build on that, the same thing happened with the whole Devin Mulaney situation with
Yeah.
Bud Light. Like everyone was like, "Oh, I'm not drinking Bud Light anymore."
I'm gonna
If
go
you
to
notice-
Modelo.
If you notice, Bud Light was very quiet. They didn't respond to that very fast.
No.
They just let that all happen because the
It's a
beers were
scam.
going to Modelo, they were going to Michelob Ultra. As long as they didn't go to Coors,
Right.
they didn't care.
Because
And
Modelo it's owned by Anheuser.
It's owned by so they, all
So
the
you
beer
weren't
brands
really
that they
boycotting
lost
anybody.
competition to, it just went into a different pocket of profits. So it's all the illusion of choice. Same thing with the Procter and Gamble and Unilever that we brought up. Like
Yeah.
it's the illusion of choice. You think you're buying one brand, the profits go to the same place.
So, do you guys have questions for us? I'll have you ask those questions of us. We'll have questions for you, and then anybody who wants to go and continue it can go, right? So, do you have questions for us? No. Okay. Who's got questions about this thing? Yes.
So their main growth strategy is obviously through acquisition, and you guys explain the benefits of it very clearly. Like they're eliminating competition and all those good things, but there is obviously supposed to be a drawback
Mhm.
to this growth strategy. So I just want to know what's the biggest drawback that AB-Inbev has faced due to rapid acquisition.
That's a great question. Yeah, the biggest drawback that happens from that is just if it goes wrong. Their evaluation process has to be so strict because you're buying these companies and you have to hope that they stay profitable. If you start buying a lot of these companies and they start tanking, your whole strategy gets thrown out the window. So it really comes down to evaluating it and doing that. And the other downside is that you do start making a lot of enemies, right? Like once you start acquiring these companies, your competitors start to see your strategy. It gets to be more of a dog-eat-dog market, and some people don't want to operate in the markets like that.
Also, to piggyback on that, another drawback that you can see locally is they own Funky Buddha, and Funky Buddha has gotten so big in South Florida that they kind of want their rights back to their own beer to brew it.
Yeah.
So that could happen at other local levels as
Yeah.
well.
And the original owners of Funky Buddha are unhappy
Yeah,
With
the
this
way
direction.
exactly.
with the way that it's being, so they're trying to buy it back. Yeah.
We got communication.
To like piggyback off of that. So I also I know about AB InBev specifically like Budweiser, then purchasing smaller companies and kind of like shutting them down so their own companies will do better.
Yep.
And then them getting the whole competitive issue like them wanting the rights back. Do you also know anything about that? And if
I don't know any specific
Yeah.
details because, like I said, there's over 400 brands.
Yeah.
But what you're saying is kind of what I was explaining in the second part. Once they go into the cost reduction, they have to go and say, like, okay, does it make sense for us to have 5 brands in this market? Is one of them underperforming? Should we cancel that out, right? This happens a lot with the craft breweries too. They've been slowly starting to buy up some craft breweries, and they're running them for a little bit, and they're like, you know what? Like, it doesn't matter. We can knock out this craft brewery, and our market share is still going to stay the same because they own some other ones successful. So it's very cutthroat, but they're just buying the main strategy for AB InBev is to just buy away the competition. A lot of big companies are doing this nowadays, but it's what grows the most. Like Facebook and Meta, they grew so much when they bought Instagram.
Right.
That's what took them to the next level. So like buying your competitors or buying your allies, however you want to look at it, can really increase your growth like exponentially. And that's the strategies they're following.
If you think about it, and most industries do that. So I don't do Facebook. I boycott Facebook, but I'm on Instagram just watching stuff all the time. Right? So am I giving it up? I knew somebody who was like, oh, I don't like to shop at Macy's. Wait, was it Macy's? Yeah. But basically, she's a Saks Fifth Avenue girl, but basically Saks Fifth Avenue, Macy owns Saks Fifth Avenue, right?
Oh, I didn't
And
know.
when she realized that, she was like, oh my God, I can't believe that. That's crazy. And you see a lot of this, even like in all industry, the shipping and maritime industry, they will buy out all of their smaller competitors, like VI Deluxe and this person and that person. They'll keep the brand name the same because you don't want to change the loyalty, the brand
It
loyalty.
just happened with, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Poppy, the new soda brand.
Yeah.
I
It
have
just got
heard
bought
about
out
that.
for 1.7 billion. I want to say by Coke because of how emerging they are. Yeah, like
Yeah.
number one soda.
It's
right
like a
now.
prebiotic drink
It's
and
something, yeah, one of those
something
funky
like
things,
that.
But yeah,
Healthier soda.
instead of just seeing how they did as a company, they just bought them out.
Healthier
Said-
soda,
said have it.
Well, that's kind of the whole topic thing. Like, we're better than Coke.
Yeah, we're better than Coke. Okay, other questions?
It was kind of like the same that she asked. I was gonna ask, like, I hear like a lot of negatives, but are they investing a lot into like those local communities and stuff, or they're just about the dollar?
Frankly, I don't know.
That's a great
We
question.
don't have an answer right now. We'll get back to you.
That's
At
a
the bar.
great, no, that's not how it
Know that their
works.
investment
That's a
policy.
great question that we hadn't considered,
Yeah.
right? But it would be interesting to see that, right? Yeah.
I mean, this is kind of like a response, I guess. I'm imagining that if they're keeping the brand very localized, keeping the local staff as it is, they're still stimulating the local economy. So they're not like directly like making donations to the local economy, but they're at least like they're not bringing in outside. They're not outsourcing. They're keeping everything domestic.
Yeah,
in the
another way
country
to
that they're
look
in,
at AB
right?
InBev is that AB InBev is making a lot of the big top line supply chain executive decisions, but most of these companies are operating somewhat independently. Like you have, if we can go on their website, you have their regional managers, which go by like continent. Don't worry about it. That goes by continent. They have like all these regional managers that will manage all the beer brands in those regions, and all those individual beer brands report to like the regional manager. So it's kind of like a more of a horizontal matrix structure. So those local beer brands can still operate somewhat independently. They can still like, okay, hey, we're gonna Funky Buddha, we're gonna throw a charity event, so on and so forth. They can still do that. AB InBev doesn't usually have too much of a hand in that pot. But I don't know if there's any initiative from AB InBev to incentivize that from the top down. Does that make sense?
Yes.
I'm gonna go back and piggyback off of what the first question I talked about it, cause I Googled it, cause I figured we're just gonna Google it, cause I don't have the answer to it right now.
Not
When,
AI?
when she was like, oh, what are they, like, how are they kind of giving back? In my head, I said to myself, very, very sarcastically, I was like, are they like involved in any like rehab thing? Cause like, it's alcohol, like legit, right? So it says here, they aim to empower change makers, focus on social impact, and focusing on reducing harmful alcohol consumption, right? While nurturing entrepreneurs, but they actually have something called environmental, social, and a governance ESG strategy to initiatives for responsible drinking, also water stewardship, and then climate action. So there's some.
So they hit all the marks, all the buzzwords.
Now,
that
whether
everyone
they
says
actually are
nowadays.
doing anything, is it just greenwashing? Is it just telling me what I want to hear? You don't know.
They also probably have to spend more money globally to do that than America.
Probably.
Because, I mean, I think the world drinking age is 18, so a lot of younger kids are getting exposed to beer.
Some of these places it's 16 now.
Really?
Yeah, some
16?
places, It's around 16.
So some, yeah, some of the places in Europe 16,
Okay.
South America getting to the low.
You know, somebody should do research with that, because I think if you just, it would be interesting to see what the level of alcoholism is if for a country with a drinking age of 16 versus 21.
The higher the age, the higher alcohol.
Yeah, because now you're just basically like, oh, I want to get to it, just like when you try to
Right,
try to sneak into the clubs when you're 16 and it's a 21 and over club, you know, and then everybody tries to do it. Any other questions before I ask mine? Okay. That one got so on the multi-domestic strategy, one of the slides, right? You mentioned about like they look for stable beer companies. Did anything say like other than okay like financial stability? Was there anything specific? Was it like the size of the company? Did that matter? Was it small, medium, larger? Just kind of like, do you know what that criteria was? How do they evaluate that criteria? What does stable mean for them outside of just financial?
Financial. Yeah,
Yeah.
so there's a lot that goes into it.
Yeah.
So it also depends on the situation, on the strategy. Like we were talking about Dario strategy. Like you don't just wake up and be like, okay, I'm gonna buy a beer brand in South America, right? You have to figure out like, does this beer brand make sense for us to buy now? Are they gaining market share? Are they stagnant? Are their financials good? Are they not? does it make a smart strategic sense to enter, like, to buy another beer in this market, or do we spend more time combating it, so on and so forth? So there's no one size fits all for it, but they take into account all the aspects of the business and timing in place.
Yeah, so when you look at like AB-Inbev, when you look at Unilever, when you look at Procter & Gamble, when you look at all these things, you have to think of it as they're these global companies, but underneath that umbrella,
So much.
there is so much more that's going on. Saltchuk is a huge family-owned business that's worth like multiple billions of dollars. It's hard to understand how much they're valued at because it's a private company, but they just purchased Overseas Shipholding Group for $1 billion last year. Goes to show you, I think that family company is like $300 or $400 billion, and they have under their umbrella maritime, right? All maritime. They've gone into restaurants, they've gone into resorts and like hotels. They've done all of these different things, and they're buying up all the companies that are making money or potentially have like the potential to do something really different, right? On your implementation slide, I know you talked about the number one priority is acquisition. Just out of curiosity, if you don't have the answer, that's fine. Were there any like recent challenges with any recent acquisitions that kind of showed up?
That's a great question.
Okay.
I'll have to look into it and get back to you.
No worries. Okay, no worries. That's really all I had. Okay.
Okay.